Hello, Sunshine, and welcome to a very special State of the Union mini pod. Midweek, we are dropping this on you because there's all sorts of stuff going on, including U.S. men's national team games and the Finalissima that we have covered this week. And there's a lot of talk and chatter about both of those things. We're going to start first with the U.S. Morocco game. We are recording this on Thursday. It happened on Wednesday. For those that saw, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. The U.S. with a resounding 3-0 win over Morocco, a good opponent, I think designed to at least try to approximate something that they are going to face in the World Cup in the likes of Iran, and a team that is also going to the World Cup. So this was a good get, and the U.S. came out and I thought was really, really good. My good friend David Mosse is here. I think I've set it up appropriately right there. First thoughts in terms of the 3-0 win over Morocco by the U.S. men's national team, Mosse?
Big win in front of dozens of fans in Cincinnati.
You're such a jerk. Why do you do this? Why do you come on?
We will get to that.
We will get to the fans and the comments from Captain America there, Christian Pulisic.
No, I thought it was a very impressive performance against, as you mentioned, a good Morocco team that, by the way, is in the same group as Canada at the World Cup. So I'm sure the Canadians were taking a peek at that game to learn more about Morocco. But yeah, the U.S. pressed high. They played sort of a high risk, high reward kind of approach. And so, yeah, they did give up some chances, but overall they were the far superior team and deserved to win by that scoreline. So, and there were so many positives that I think you have to come out of this night feeling very good about.
Let me ask you something, because there was so much talk over the last couple of years about this U.S. team and the context in which we view them now through no fault of their own, just the world changed, obviously. And so much of it is based on, almost all of it is based on them playing against CONCACAF competition. Now they get to play, somebody outside of CONCACAF. Would they have been better served in terms of their preparation playing Mexico, for example?
No, I think there's something to the fact that getting out of the monotony of facing the same teams from your region that you're used to facing all the time, it gave them a little bit of a spark and it allows them to learn some new things about the team. So I like the idea of getting out of that CONCACAF bubble and playing some teams from other regions, even if they're perhaps not the strongest teams in the world that you could possibly face.
I do too. And I agree with you. I only asked the question because it was, as I said, a resounding result. And it's not that Morocco didn't have opportunities, and it's not that the U.S. couldn't have let in goals, but certainly on paper, when this thing comes out as a 3-0 win versus Morocco and the way in which they played, this was a fairly easy game, but I don't think that it was devalued or did not have value for the U.S. team. All right, let's dive into the actual personnel, because Greg Berhalter and company are still assessing. We know that there are new players in camp, but I think that he went after this game and really put what he felt of the players available, the best 11 that he could. And if this had been, let's say, that first game in the World Cup in November at Qatar, I would have no problem saying that this could have been absolutely your starting 11, given the injuries that they have and given the players that aren't in camp. We mentioned going into this that there was going to be scrutiny, and there always is up top with the number 9 position. He started Jesus Ferreira in that number 9, false 9 type of position. We mentioned in the back who was going to pair Walker Zimmerman, ends up being Aaron Long, who we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. We also mentioned the goalkeeper position, and with Zach Steffen stepping out midweek, we didn't kind of get that decision by Greg Berhalter. It was just kind of this, had to go with Matt Turner, and Matt Turner was fine over there. And then a midfield trio of Brenden Aaronson, Tyler Adams, Yunus Musa to complete it everything. Anthony Robinson on the left-hand side, Reggie Cannon on the right back side, Tim Weah on the right side up in the top 3. As I mentioned, Jesus Ferreira in the middle in that false 9 position, then Christian Pulisic, obviously, on the left-hand side. Let me start, I guess, let's go back to front, Mosse. How about doing that? Matt Turner, I don't think that you or I have a real problem, not with just him starting. Even if Zach Steffen is there, I think that everyone's pretty much at this point of the opinion that either one of them is good. Everybody has one way or the other, but it is, for me, 6 of one, maybe not totally 6 of one, half a dozen of the other here. I would start Matt Turner. I think he did fine here, and I don't think he did anything to change the opinion that people have of him. But it doesn't mean that when Zach Steffen gets back, that Greg Berhalter might not start him. Although in this lead up to this game, Mosse, it should be said that when asked about the situation with players, Greg Berhalter went out of his way to talk about a player like Sean Johnson and to say, I'm going to play the guy that is playing and is in, the best possible position, which is a little bit strange. I'm not sure I believe him there, but anyway, Matt Turner, were you cool with that?
I agree with you. I would start Turner. And I even thought he was pretty good with the ball at his feet, which even he seems to think is the one hole in his game. I know you disagree with that. You think he's too hard on himself when it comes to that part of his game, but I thought the U.S. passed the ball out of the back beautifully. There was one sequence in particular where they swung the ball around beautifully and ended up with Haji Wright face to face with the Morocco goalkeeper. He was denied, and Turner played a part in the start of that sequence. So, yeah, I thought very impressive performance from him. Obviously, he didn't have much to do with the penalty miss, but nevertheless kept a clean sheet and did what he had to do. So positive for him all around. Yeah,
I agree with you. He dimed out. I think it was Yunus Mosse or somebody in the midfield halfway through, probably the first half. Just a beautiful little 35, 40-yard ball over the top of players into a player that was wide open, and he dimed him out. It was very good from Matt Turner. All right, in the back, I didn't think that the pairing of Aaron Long and Zimmerman, I thought that they were fine. I thought that there wasn't a problem. I do think that there could be some pace problems when we get up against teams that are trying to get behind us, and obviously teams that are faster than Morocco. Morocco most kind of posted up against Aaron Long often, but I thought that they looked comfortable together. If the World Cup started tomorrow and that was our tandem, do I think it's the best tandem we've ever had in a back four? No, but I think that right now, this is probably the best tandem that we have. Thoughts, Mosse?
Yeah, and staying with my theme from Matt Turner, I thought Aaron Long's distribution was very good as well out of the back. So, he got turned around a couple of times there in the first half. So you're right, there's some potential pace issues there against quicker forwards, but overall, I thought pretty solid performance from him.
Okay, let's go to the midfield then. And unless you want to hit anybody else in the back four, you good with that?
No, I'm good.
All right, so Brenden Aaronson, Tyler Adams, Yunus Mosse. I thought Mosse was really good again. Tyler Adams, his usual self, breaking up plays and making really crucial types of runs. He's just a really smart player. Brenden Aaronson is really, really interesting, and I'm gonna save my Brenden Aaronson here until we get through the rest of the lineup here. But I got something to say important about Brenden Aaronson. Okay, let's go to the top up there. Tim Weah on the right-hand side, Christian Pulisic on the left-hand side, and Jesus Ferreira in that false nine position. Do you think that this is Jesus Ferreira's position to lose, playing that false nine position just because we don't have anybody better right now? Although Haji Wright did come in the second half.
I wouldn't go that far. It would have been nice to crown this incredible goal scoring form he's in MLS with a goal in this game. He did a lot of good Jesus Ferreira type stuff, but he didn't score. And so that, at the international level, at least, that's still going to be the question mark. Is there a trade-off by playing Jesus Ferreira up there that you're not going to get the goals that a more traditional center forward might give you? Haji Wright ends up scoring from the penalty spot. So I don't think you can read too much into that. But nevertheless, I don't know if it was quite the performance Jesus Ferreira would have wanted to just cement the fact that he's clearly the if the World Cup was tomorrow, I agree. He'd probably start up there, but I don't think he has a huge lead over the pack, I guess is what I would say.
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk then Christian Pulisic, who I thought had another good to great game and certainly some incredible moments, both drawing the penalty in the second half and assisting on the first half goal to Brenden Aaronson, who I'll talk about in a second. I thought he was really, really good. I on his goal that he assisted to Brenden Aaronson, keep in mind that it was after a lot of possession from the U.S. It was a long ball direct right out of the back. And Christian Pulisic starts out wide and comes inside. I got no problem with Christian Pulisic if he's playing on that left-hand side every once in a while coming in the middle in the way that he did. And he had a wonderful first touch over his shoulder there and just showed his incredible class and skill in that moment. But I don't want Christian Pulisic always being on the inside. I like him more on the outside, really causing havoc on the outside. Although this is where he did his damage, was right down the middle, and I thought it was a great and well-timed and lofted and recognized ball from Walker Zimmerman. Obviously, an incredible touch to set himself up, the fake shot, bring it back, and then just basically put it on a platter for Brenden Aaronson. Any Christian Pulisic on the field thoughts?
Well, the touch was incredible. I also love the little spin move to get away from the defender right after that. So that play all the way around was just absolutely breathtaking piece of skill from him. And then he lays it on for Aaronson for the goal. Later on, he lets Haji Wright take the penalties. So a pretty unselfish performance all around, I would say, from Christian Pulisic, which was nice to see.
Okay, so let's let me talk about Brenden Aaronson, and then I want to talk about Haji right here. Okay, so Brenden Aaronson started in that 3. We all know that Weston McKennie has been injured. He did show up for about 20 minutes, which was great to see him on the field. And I think when all is said and done, that from a Greg Berhalter standpoint, that 3 is going to be what we've seen traditionally, which is Yunus Musah, Tyler Adams, and Weston McKennie. However, I'm being asked, Mosse, for this weekend, and you can tune in when we do the U.S.-Uruguay game, to give my best 11 if everybody is healthy. All right? Obviously, it's idyllic. It's never that case. But let's just say that everybody is healthy. To give my best 11. I am working so hard to get Brenden Aaronson into the starting lineup. I think that he has come on so fast that I worry about us having the best 11 that doesn't include Brenden Aaronson. Now, keep in mind, in order to do that, I have to take out somebody and maybe 2 people that are and have been kind of starters for a long time. But that's how good and I think important Brenden Aaronson is. And he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for kicking on and going over to Europe. And from a national team perspective, and it's not just about work rate. He is a Joe Max Moore. Who, yes, will run through a wall with you. For those that don't know, this was probably the most competitive U.S. men's national team colleague that I ever had, would do anything, wanted to win at absolutely everything that he did, and just ran, but not ran like a chicken with his head cut off, ran with purpose, but had an engine that just would not quit. As I said, would run through a wall. So I'm going to find a way this weekend, when I give you my best 11, it's a little teaser for you to watch the show and the game on Sunday, to get Brenden Aaronson in my best 11. But in doing so, there may be others out there that you normally would have on your 11 that aren't going to be there. Were you as impressed with Brenden Aaronson as I was, or are you in general?
Yes, and what I found interesting was when the U.S. plays in a 4-3-3, we usually draw it up with Adams as the 6 and then 2 8s. But this time it felt like Adams and Musah were sitting and Aaronson was playing farther ahead of both of them, almost in a number 10 type role. So it's interesting how he figured out a way, because a lot of people, when they saw Aaronson playing in the midfield, they didn't love that because they think in Berhalter's system, he makes more sense as a winger. But Berhalter figured out a creative way there to give him the freedom that he needed to shine. And yeah, he's now going to the Premier League. And so if he plays well there, that's going to add even more to his stock. And so, we've talked about this on the podcast that there were a few players that everyone had singled out as the real standard bearers of this generation: Pulisic, McKennie, Adams, Reina, Dest. And for a long time, Aaronson was considered sort of second tier in that pecking order. And now he seems to be moving into that top tier where a lot of people are putting him on the level with those other players and thinking, as you do, that he's a player that you have to find a place for in the starting lineup. And so, that would be perhaps at the expense of Yunus Musah in the midfield, if we're assuming that McKennie and Adams have to be starters, perhaps in the expense of Reina, if he can't get himself healthy. Timothy Weah, obviously, in that mix as well. There's the option of, I know you don't like him, of playing without a center forward and playing somebody like a Pulisic or Weah central. So there's all sorts of different ways you could go. But yeah, there seems to be this sentiment that you need to find a way to get Aaronson into the lineup.
Yep. And I'll be the first person to admit, and I was talking to Mo Adu today on our show, and he's been all over Aaronson playing in Philadelphia. And so he's seen him grow up, and he was telling me about him before anybody was talking about it. And I couldn't see it, but I will raise my hand and say, this is a player that I want, and I think we have to have on the field going forward. And these are all champagne problems that we are even in this position where we're going to take some really good players, and they're not going to start. Okay, the second goal comes from the run of play with Weah just turning and just smashing it. Now, goalkeeper's got to save it. I know it's moving and everything like that, but you got to take the shots, and sometimes you get lucky. And the thing was knuckling a little bit, but. The goalkeeper there, Bruno, has to save that, right?
Oh yeah, that was a howler.
Okay.
I love Timmy Weah, and he was in great goal scoring form for Lille at the end of the season. So now he gets a goal here. So you like to see that his goal scoring confidence is high right now, but that one was certainly a gift by the goalkeeper.
Okay, so we get to the second half. It's 2-0. We get to the second half, and Greg Berhalter, we know he brought a bunch of players in, players that we hadn't seen, and he makes the changes as we expected. There were changes. We saw Haji Wright, as we mentioned. We'll talk about his the penalty and the situation with the penalty. Joe Scally came in, Carter Vickers, Eric Palmer Brown, Tillman, Malik Tillman. So a couple players getting their first look when it comes to the national team. I didn't think that anybody shone in a way where I was just blown away. And this is an moment. And believe me, as U.S. soccer fans, we love to have those moments. But I didn't feel like this is crazy. I can't believe that this player has been sitting on the side. But it's still a very small sample size, including up top, which we know that number 9 position. And, the opportunity for Haji Wright to come in, I didn't think that he was dominating in a way that I want from that number 9 position, although he certainly played it in a much more traditional sense relative to Jesus Ferreira, but he didn't knock my socks off. Having said that, the Christian Pulisic draws a penalty. They do the old bait and switch where Christian Pulisic stands over the ball, and then ultimately the last minute he turns and throws the ball to Haji Wright. Now, people have to understand that there is a history between those two, as there is with other players, and they kind of have all grown up in the same generation. And I feel that there's a real sentiment within this group that they're supporting and they are rooting for Haji Wright to come good and to be a part of this team. And who knows? Who knows what the power is in this team? They might be ultimately the ones that, when that's dictated of what that 2016 man roster is and gets on the plane, who knows? Haji Wright may, because of what the player he is, but also because of the relationship and the dynamic that's formed there, might be on that plane. What'd you think of Haji Wright?
Well, you saw the trade-off of having more of a traditional center forward as opposed to Jesus Ferreira. So, it's not as much movement, but it is that sort of reference point that other guys can play off of. So, I don't think he was overly impressive, but he's certainly a guy that I think is going to remain in the mix here. Can we move on to other subs?
Yes, we can. Certainly.
I disagree with you. I was very impressed with Luca de la Torre. He's a player that continues to grow on me, and I think has just about cemented a ticket to Qatar. Not quite as a starter.
We've seen him play well before. I mean, this isn't a surprise player or something like that.
But it's still a relatively small sample. So each time he does it, it's sort of affirming that, this is a real player here that I think could have a role to play at this World Cup as backup, but it's still a very good option to have in that midfield.
Anybody else tickle your fancy?
Well, Joe Scally, we waited so long for this. I don't think he was particularly impressive. I think he was one of the few negative. Obviously gave away that penalty, which was some people thought was a harsh.
I mean,
call,
it wasn't a penalty. It wasn't a foul, but still. I mean, in a World Cup, crazy stuff can happen, and you tend to get defined by the things that happen. Believe me, I can attest to that.
That's about it. So, like I said, very positive all the way around.
Okay, let's finish up the U.S. part of it, and as we mentioned, the U.S. will then play Uruguay on Sunday. You can find that on Fox, right, Mosse? FS1, Fox? What are we doing?
Sunday on Fox.
Big Fox.
Uruguay and Kansas City.
So that will be fun to see, and certainly another test. And I would think who knows who they play, but it's still a team with some pedigree. The Christian Pulisic comments after the game. He goes, as often is the case, the star of the show. They get an interview. Well, it's not often the case because he doesn't often give interviews, but Christian Pulisic gives an interview after the game to our friends at ESPN. And let's make sure that we credit the folks over there at ESPN, because God forbid. And he gives an interview on ESPN in which he says a number of different things, including that he was, let me see, I'll read you the quote. To be honest, for whatever reason, I'm not super happy with the amount of Americans here. However that works out. If I'm being completely honest, so now he's definitely being honest, but thanks to the ones that did come and support it, and support is always great from them. All right, so look, I mean, this was a reaction to the environment that he was playing in. This was a reaction to what he saw or didn't see and wanted to see. And this was probably a choice of words that kind of set him up to have people outraged and to come for him. If he had to do it over again, he probably would have said, rather than saying the amount of Americans here, the amount of U.S. men's national team fans or American fans here, okay? Because there was plenty of people that were there cheering for Morocco that are as American as he is or anybody else is. That's fair enough, and I think he would admit it. Having said that, the clutching of pearls and the consternation and the irate reaction to Christian Pulisic saying this is a bit much. Okay. Now, there were some that say that this was relative to the ticket prices and that he was calling out the federation. Look, I'm just happy, first off, that Christian Pulisic agreed to do an interview. And more importantly, that he actually did an interview that was interesting and entertaining. Because if you've ever watched Christian Pulisic, that is not his forte. That is not what he did. But that people are screaming and yelling about Christian Pulisic's post-game interview, whatever. And by the way, another thing, if Christian Pulisic was bent out of shape because he was playing in what he saw or perceived to be a less than supportive environment while playing for the U.S. men's national team in the United States, then that dude wouldn't have lasted 2 minutes playing with me back in the 90s. Because pretty much everywhere we played in the United States when we were playing, quote unquote, at home was oftentimes an away game for us. Things have changed since then. And I just think that he was, pointing out the situation that maybe to him, in his mind, was a little bit strange. Thoughts on Christian Pulisic's comments after the game, Mosse?
Well, yeah, there's two layers to this story. The more mundane one, I suppose, is the ticket prices, and does the U.S. Federation need to look at it, whether they're gouging fans and whether they're charging too much for tickets to these games and it's affecting attendance. And then there's this larger conversation about the U.S. being this multiracial, diverse melting pot of a country, which benefits the U.S. on the field because they're able to get a lot of these dual nationals, but it maybe prevents them from having as great a home field advantage as other nations do, because pretty much anyone that the U.S. plays, there are a fair amount of people from that country living in the United States who it's exciting for them to go get to watch their country play in a game. So they go, and I don't know, that cuts into the U.S.'s home field advantage. I think Pulisic has come to expect it against CONCACAF opposition, but he was a little bit taken aback that in Cincinnati against Morocco, it was like that. But I guess there are more Moroccans than we realize living close by. So, yeah, I don't think it's that big a deal, but I do think there are a couple of interesting topics there that are worth fleshing out.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and if people are complaining about the price of tickets, I understand that, and you risk being seen as either tone deaf or delusional by saying, something like that and not recognizing that not only in normal times, people pay their hard-earned money, but in the times that we live in right now, it's even more difficult. I would think that when you would take it to the federation, they would say, well, they would turn it around and say, well, how do you suggest that we continue to support all of the USSF members and the programs that they have to, while satisfying all of those contractual obligations to the U.S. men's national team and U.S. women's national team in these new deals that have been made such a big deal about, which increase pay and which pay the teams equally and make the U.S. men's national team and U.S. women's national team the highest paid national teams in the world. You got to make that money, and you got to do the business that you feel is appropriate. That's all off the field stuff. The problem is that it takes away from what I think is a really positive result against not a great team, but a good team, and a situation where we find ourselves asking more and more good questions relative to the depth that this U.S. men's national team has, and that we are fighting and arguing about who that best 11 is. I think that's a good thing, and I think it speaks to the level of talent and the amount of talent that we have. And I think we'll continue to be debating this all the way into the World Cup. And as a matter of fact, I don't think anything is going to solidify, to be quite honest. I think that Greg Berhalter is going to arrive at the World Cup in November and December, and we will still have the questions that we are asking today, and that in a strange way, he might not have his best 11. In that this is the best 11, and this is what we're going to play every single game. And he will cater it to each and every opponent. And there will be moments where we might scratch our head, but not in a way that says this guy's crazy for playing this other guy. So that's anyway. These are, as we say, champagne problems, as Tata Martino would say. Right? Anything else on this game, Mosse?
No, I'm just curious to see how many fans are there in Kansas City on Sunday, since that's now become part of the story. So
you mean how many Americans?
Yes, how many Americans?
Oh goodness, I you know what, Christian Pulisic is, like I said, he finally said something interesting. So, all right, let's transition over to Finalissima. Right? I mean, this was fun, and for people that either didn't watch or don't know, we mentioned it on the pod that we did earlier this week. Argentina as champions in Copa America and champions of CONMEBOL playing against the champions of Europe, European champions, Italy. We know Italy is not going to the World Cup as of today. Never know. But Argentina certainly is. And this was a thorough and comprehensive win by the CONMEBOL champions in England, in Wembley, in front of a packed house that was rocking. This game was, I thought it was great, Mosse. I don't know about you. It was entertaining. It was competitive. Don't tell me for a second that this was a glorified friendly. There was a trophy at the end, but I think both of these teams were taking it seriously in the representation of not only themselves and their country and their national team, but of their confederation, whether it's CONMEBOL or UEFA. And Argentina, this is as good as an Argentina that I have seen in terms of their balance and in terms of their confidence. And you add a motivated Messi with, to a certain extent, the burden of not having won a major trophy off after winning Copa America, who's arguably going into his final World Cup in November. And if yesterday was any indication of what this Argentina is and what it can be, that bodes real well for their future come November and December. Thoughts on the Finalissima?
Yeah, it was 3 and it could have been 6. That's how superior Argentina was. And they didn't even have a player who I love, Leandro Paredes, at the base of that midfield. And so Guido Rodriguez started instead. It was more of a ball winner, so that sapped them of some of their fluidity, but it didn't matter because Lo Celso and DePaul were terrific. And they were able to get the ball to Messi in good spots. And Messi was really on his game. And he's got Di Maria and Lautaro Martinez to play with up there. So, yeah, they're firing in all cylinders right now, unbeaten in 32. This was a real statement win for them. They, to your point, they took it very seriously. You could tell the way they celebrated afterwards. And, yeah, I'm surprised. This match was played against the backdrop of Mbappe's comments that we discussed on the podcast this past week. And, man, I'm surprised how much that served as bulletin board material for Argentina. But the Argentinian media after the game was just throwing that in Mbappe's face, and this was an answer to you. And so Mbappe really struck a nerve with South Americans, so that this became a very much South American pride thing. They wanted to beat the European champions to really send a message to Europe.
And listen, Europe gets so much attention, and the world is Eurocentric when it comes to soccer, and rightfully so, and understandably so. But while most of the Argentinians ply their trade in Europe at some of the best and biggest clubs, there's also a sense of pride, and I think that they were also playing for their region, and a region that at times gets crapped on. Doesn't mean that there is incredible talent there. And so you could see that. The other thing that I think that this are we calling it Argentinian or Argentine? What should we do here, Mosse?
I've been told Argentine is more formal. I think
Okay.
Argentinian is more informal.
All right. Well, in watching this Argentinian team play, there was a sense of excitement, but responsibility to Messi. And we saw the scenes after where they're throwing him up and down. And look, this is arguably the greatest player ever to play the game, that is still playing, that is still a star, as we saw on the field. But I feel like they want to do it for him. They want to put him in the best possible position to succeed. And ultimately, I mean, he walked into that Wembley Stadium, and there again were pictures of Maradona. Okay. He understands that. He long accepted that. But I think that there is a real desire, and I think it comes from an incredible respect and love for him of this Argentinian team to give him that opportunity. Now, the difference in the past is that I think that they all had reverence for him, but the balance and the supporting cast that he has and the depth that they have and the ability that they have. And it's not just here, Messi, take the ball and do your thing. It's we're going to do a lot of different things here. At a moment, we're going to give you the ball. We want you to do a moment of magic, which you're more than able to do, but we're going to be there on the other end. They had somebody up top in Lautaro Martinez who does that. Angel Di Maria, I mean, continues to just not inconceivably. I mean, just be a great player and be constantly a problem. And they got a whole bench full of talent that they can bring on. Have you seen? I mean, how good do you think that this Argentinian team is? And maybe more importantly, how good can it be?
Oh, I think they're one of the top 3 or 4 contenders to win the World Cup. They can absolutely win the whole thing. And yeah, I mean, first off on Messi, it's amazing how, and this started to be true even late in his Barcelona career, and certainly true now at PSG, how much the club versus country dynamic has flipped for him. And he feels much more comfortable playing for his country than he does his club. It's almost like the country is now the refuge from the dysfunction at club level. And yeah, you know, it's funny. UEFA erroneously put out a lineup with Paulo Dybala in it initially. Then they corrected it. It was Lo Celso instead. And I was actually intrigued to see Dybala and Messi try to play together because that's always been an issue for them. But instead, Dybala came on late, scored the 3rd goal. But what a player to be able to bring off the bench. I mean, and then they brought on this kid, Julian Alvarez, who I mentioned on the last podcast, just scored 6 goals in a Copa Libertadores game for River Plate. And he's off to Manchester City this summer. So depending on how he does the first few months in the Premier League, he could carve out a bigger role with that team. So yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly talented team. They've got a great chemistry. They love their coach, Scaloni. As I said, unbeaten in 32. They've now collected a couple of trophies, so they're building this sort of winning culture. And so, yeah, Argentina is having a moment right now. I'm having to sit back and admit I can't poke holes into this. It's
keep in mind, Argentina is in Group C, along with Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Poland. And as mentioned by Mosse right there, for so long, when it came to Messi, we saw the ideal Messi with club. And let's be honest, since going to PSG, that has not been the case. And yet it has completely flipped in that now the ideal Messi is showing up with Argentina. Great news for Argentina. Not so great news if you are going to be an opponent of them.
A couple more thoughts. When Italy failed to qualify for the World Cup, there was a lot of rationalizing that went on. They pointed out the fact that, hey, we won the Euros not long ago. We had a 37-match unbeaten run during this cycle, and the European qualifiers are very unforgiving. You have one bad day, you lose one game, and you're out. And so it doesn't mean that there's these deep-seated issues with Italian football. And I almost felt like this game was more of a wake-up call than failing to qualify to the World Cup. And the reaction after this game has been more sobering of, oh my God, how far away are we from a team like Argentina and what's happened to Italian football? Now, they were missing some key players, guys like Immobile and Berardi and Insigne and Verratti, Chiesa as well. So that's fair to point out. But nevertheless, I mean, they look totally outclassed. And I think if you're an Italian, you come away even more depressed after this game than even you did after that loss to North Macedonia that knocked you out of World Cup qualifying. Do you agree with that?
I do. And I also think they looked slow and long in the tooth in the back, you know, with Bonucci and Chiellini. And, you know, that gives me pause. And I worry about a center back as good as Chiellini is and how much I love him for the player and just the personality that he is. Even coming to a great team, and LAFC is a great team in MLS, I worry. I'm not saying that the deal shouldn't be done, but man.
Well, we're going to have the LAFC coach, Steve Cherundolo, as part of our Nations League coverage, so you can ask him about it. He'll be sitting right next to him.
I mean, like he's got to do it, and I get it. He's got to do it, and they will find ways to protect him. And he's playing for a good team, but you know, if you're the last in line, you can look really bad really quickly because there's nobody obviously to cover up for your mistakes as a center back, and if you get caught for pace and over the top. I mean, there was a moment there, obviously on one of the goals where he thought that Donnarumma was going to come out, and there was a little confusion there. But even if Donnarumma hadn't come out, I think he would have gotten beaten for pace there, as would a lot of center backs in that position, to be fair to him.
And one more larger point, we used to have the Confederations Cup, and everybody complained about that. They thought it was a useless tournament, and they got rid of it, and now they've created this Finalissima, and the reaction's been very positive. Does it bother you that there's a type of person out there that feels like the other regions are just clutter, and that's why they complain about the Club World Cup, they complain about the Confederations Cup, and anything that just cuts through the clutter and just puts Europe versus South America, that's what we really want to see. So that's all we need, and that's great. Does that annoy you that, why would somebody like this and not the Confederations Cup unless they just feel like the other regions are not worthy and it's a waste of time for a European nation to even have to face teams from CONCACAF and Asia, et cetera?
Well, you just answered your question. That's exactly why. And, let's be honest. I mentioned the Eurocentric way the world is right now when it comes to soccer. In that hierarchy, who's second? I would think that it would be CONMEBOL. I know that it's CONMEBOL, especially maybe not always with the individual leagues and teams, but certainly with the talent that exists. And by the way, as we said before, a lot of that talent eventually shows up in Europe. And so there is this connection. But then you also have, the World Cup every 2 years and the situation going on in the the butting of heads between FIFA and UEFA. And so there's all of this power play going on right now and this jockeying for position. It's actually fascinating, and it's palace intrigue and all this stuff that's going on. So just in general, that this game garnered this attention should be a surprise to no one. And that this game even happened should also be a surprise to no one, especially happening at this moment when there is this friction and even this anxiety about what that world order is going to look like, and the power struggle between UEFA and FIFA, and to a certain extent, CONMEBOL. And I don't think it's going to stop. It's going to stop here. And if I'm looking at it from a CONCACAF perspective or any other confederation out there that's not CONMEBOL or UEFA, the rich are getting richer, and I worry about them pulling away. Maybe even literally pulling away and creating something. Hey, there's your Superliga, or something like that.
Well, and now they're talking about having a Finalissima on the women's side between the champions of Europe and South America. But I feel like on the women's side, CONCACAF needs to be that other region. It's a much sexier game if it's the US versus the European champion. So I don't know why it has to be. I don't know. Do you what do you think about that?
Yeah, but never put it past FIFA, or not FIFA. In this case, it would be UEFA and CONMEBOL, to send a message. And look, we're still the United States. And while we are the elite of the elite when it comes to the women's side, we're still the United States whenever we play. And people like to see the United States on and off the fields of play be put in their place and use moments to send messages and to poke, if you will, especially when it comes to that world order and that tradition that we have. So yeah, from a pure competitive standpoint, it makes no sense at all. Okay, you have the European champion, and then you have it against, it would be the United States. But I'm not sure that that's going to be what they do. And maybe it will be in an effort to promote and, in their minds, expand. So it's not always a US-centric type of conversation when it comes to women's soccer.
Maybe I'm being elitist towards South American women's football. I'm doing the exact thing in reverse that I accuse people of doing on the men's side. So,
I still love you, buddy. All right. Anything else before we go?
And that is it.
All right, listen, we really appreciate you tuning in here. I know this has just shown up in your feed. We wanted to get this out and talk about both of these games and these events because they're really cool. And there's a lot of stuff that's happening through the summer, and obviously as we lead into the World Cup in November and December in Qatar. And so we will be doing these when we feel they are appropriate. Little presents that you find there, and you can take them or leave them. Hope that you take them. We hope that you are listening here because we have a fun time doing them. Obviously, they're much shorter than the usual weekly output that we have, but we really wanted to try to do some of these things, especially when we're talking about big teams, big moments, and big games that happen. Sometimes, Mosse, I don't know about you, but sometimes a week is too long in between to be able to talk about these things.
So we save the TV chatter only for the regular weekly podcast, right?
Exactly.
Because I am plowing through We Own This City, and we're going to have quite the conversation about that in the next episode, my friend.
That's right. And my wife just informed me that there is a new episode of the Stairway out. Stairway, right? Is that what? Staircase. The Staircase. Excuse me. The Stairway. Like I know. All right. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, listen, we have more Nations League on Fox throughout this week. And as we mentioned, U.S. Uruguay on Big Fox on Sunday. And we will be back again next week at our regularly scheduled time. Thank you for tuning into this special State of the Union mini pod, if you will. And we will talk again next time. And until then, and as always, size the day. You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.